Every currency war begins the same way, with a promise the world should never have believed. In 1931, the British pound, the backbone of world trade, collapsed overnight. Ships leaving London suddenly carried goods priced in dollars. In 1971, Richard Nixon's voice crackled across television screens as he announced the end of gold convertibility. The dollar, once a promise of metal, became pure belief. And in 2022, when Western powers froze hundreds of billions of Russia's foreign reserves, the world saw money turn from store of value into a weapon of war. 3 moments, 3 ruptures, 1 hidden pattern. Every empire's power ends the same way, not with soldiers, but with spreadsheets. The fall of a currency is the quiet death of sovereignty. And today, that slow death is beginning again. The next great conflict won't be fought over oil or land. It will be fought over trust, the invisible network of digits, promises, and credit lines that decide who rules the world economy. Because currencies are not neutral tools. They are political weapons, designed to extend the reach of empires far beyond their borders. When Britain ruled the seas, the pound ruled the ports. When America ruled the airwaves, the dollar ruled the markets. But history whispers a warning: no currency reigns forever. To understand why, we need to go back in time to the smoke-filled trading floors of London in the early 20th century, to gold bars shipped across oceans, to the moment the global monetary order was built and the cracks that would one day tear it apart began to form. The coming currency war has already begun. We just haven't recognized its opening shots yet. London, 1913. The beating heart of global finance. Half of the world's trade was invoiced in pounds. The City of London's banks held more gold than any other nation on earth. British investors owned nearly half of all overseas foreign investments. Railways in India, mines in Africa, oil in Persia. The empire didn't just rule through armies, it ruled through credit. But behind the polished marble of the Bank of England, a quiet anxiety grew. The gold standard, the sacred anchor of stability, made money sound, but brittle. Every pound issued had to be backed by gold. When wars or crises struck, gold fled, and economies suffocated. Yet Britain clung to it, believing faith in gold meant faith in empire. Then came 1914. World War I shattered that illusion. Britain suspended the gold standard to print money for war. By 1918, its national debt had risen tenfold. The empire survived, but its balance sheet was bleeding. Across the Atlantic, a new creditor emerged, the United States. The dollar, once a provincial currency, became the world's banker. In 1925, Winston Churchill, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, made a fateful choice. He returned Britain to the gold standard at the pre-war rate of $4.86 to the pound. It was meant to restore glory. Instead, it strangled industry. British exports collapsed by 30%. Unemployment soared above 10%. The empire had chained itself to an illusion of strength. By 1931, the pressure snapped. Britain abandoned gold, shocking the world and signaling the end of its monetary supremacy. The pound's fall marked more than a policy failure. It was a transfer of global power. The dollar began its silent ascent. But this wasn't just about economics. It was about control. Gold had anchored nations to discipline. Now paper money could be created by decree, and whoever controlled that decree would control the future. The turning point had arrived. The next empire was being born not on battlefields, but in boardrooms. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, July 1944. While Europe burned, 730 delegates from 44 nations gathered in a secluded hotel surrounded by pine forests. Their mission: to rebuild the world's shattered financial system. On paper, it was cooperation. In reality, it was conquest by contract, not by cannon. The United States emerged from the war with 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. Britain was broke, France exhausted, and Germany in ruins. The world had no choice but to accept America's terms. The new order declared the US dollar the anchor of global trade, pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. Every other currency was pegged to the dollar. The gold standard was reborn, but now Washington held the key. For a while, it worked. The 1,950 seconds and 60 seconds saw an explosion of trade, industry, and prosperity. Dollars flowed across oceans, financing factories in Japan, rebuilding Europe, and creating a consumer paradise at home. But beneath the surface, a quiet arithmetic betrayal grew. By the late 1,960 seconds, America was printing more dollars than it had gold to back. The Vietnam War drained coffers, social programs ballooned. By 1971, U.S. gold reserves had fallen from over 20,000 tons in 1958 to barely 8,000. Foreign governments, led by France's Charles de Gaulle, began demanding real gold in exchange for paper. Planes loaded with bullion flew out of Fort Knox. Then on the 15th of August 1971, Richard Nixon spoke to the nation. "I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporarily became forever. The dollar was no longer a promise, it was power, sustained by military strength and global trust. The old world had ended. The new one had no anchor, only faith. Money had become entirely abstract, a declaration, not a measure. But hidden beneath this historic moment was something deeper. The transformation of currency itself into a weapon of empire. The surface story was about stability. The secret story was about control. After 1971, the dollar was unchained from gold, yet somehow stronger than ever. Why? Because Washington had found a new anchor: oil. In 1974, U.S. officials struck a secret agreement with Saudi Arabia. In exchange for military protection, the Saudis would price all oil sales in U.S. dollars. Every barrel sold from the Middle East to Europe or Asia now required dollars to buy. The world's lifeblood energy became tied to one currency. Thus was born the petrodollar system. This move turned the dollar into the bloodstream of global trade. Nations needed dollars not because they trusted America's discipline, but because they needed oil to survive. And to get dollars, they had to hold U.S. debt. By the 1982, foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds exploded past $100 billion. By the 2000s, it was over $2 trillion. The same paper America printed to fund its deficits became the world's safest asset. But behind the facade of stability lay dependence. When America printed money, the world absorbed the shock. When the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, entire continents felt pain. The 1980 Latin American debt crisis. The 1997 Asian financial collapse. Each was a tremor of a system that exported inflation and imported control. Then came 2022. In one act of financial warfare, Western nations froze more than $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves, money held in dollars and euros. For the first time, the world saw reserves, the supposed foundation of sovereignty, turned into leverage. It was a modern echo of past empires weaponizing trade routes and gold. Only this time, the weapon was code. The pattern was clear. Gold once anchored trust. Now, power did. And power could be programmed. Central bank digital currencies, sanctions, and payment blacklists are simply new versions of the same invisible chain. History had shown the mechanism. Now, it was being perfected. History never ends. It only loops. Today, we stand on the edge of another monetary shift, one eerily familiar. China and Russia are settling trade in yuan and gold. The BRICS nations are testing a new reserve currency backed by commodities. Saudi Arabia is negotiating oil deals outside the dollar. And central banks around the world are hoarding gold at the fastest pace since 1967. They see what's coming. The system, built in 1974, the petrodollar order, is cracking under its own weight. U.S. debt now exceeds $34 trillion. Interest payments alone surpass $1 trillion per year. Every new dollar printed buys less trust than the last, and the rest of the world is quietly preparing for a future where the dollar is no longer the only language of trade. But this isn't just geopolitics. It's personal. When currencies compete, ordinary people pay the price. Inflation erodes savings. Nations devalue to survive. The purchasing power you thought you owned can vanish in a single policy meeting. We've seen this before in Weimar Germany, in Britain's post-war decline, in Argentina's endless cycles. Every time, citizens wake up to find their money has been redefined. And now comes the digital frontier, central bank digital currencies. They promise speed, convenience, control. But history whispers, every new system begins as progress and ends as power. The same technology that can streamline payments can also track them, limit them, switch them off. The next currency war won't need guns or gold convoys. It will unfold on servers, in sanctions, and in silent keystrokes. Empires rise when the world believes in their money. They fall when that belief breaks. The warning isn't in the future, it's in the past, and it's already repeating. When trust dies, currencies follow. And when currencies fall, empires go with them.